What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Etheria restart video. Today's been a big week for PvP, right? We had the EWS last weekend. If you haven't already checked out my interview with Yongo, please check that out. EWS top 8 finalists, insane gear, really insightful on how he plays the game. And then we're gonna have Reroll Hugh, another top 4 finalist, I believe, top 8, top 4 as well. I've had my own bruiser videos. If you haven't seen that, check out my own turn 2 video guide. And then today, let's go ahead and talk about all things shells in the current meta. And this is for the highest level of play, right? Diamond, Master, and even Mythic. And this is for Fearless Arena or RTA. We're going to go over every single one, talk about my thoughts, where I place them and why. I'll talk about at the end as well. Make sure you stay till the end because I'm going to talk about recommended matrices. Not every single combination, but the ones to look out for, as well as some very key passives that you guys should be rolling on each one. We'll try to pick out probably most of the S rank. I'll go through, some examples. That being said, guys, one last disclaimer is that there's going to be a huge patch probably coming next week at the end of the RTA season, which is wrapping up very soon.
This is not okay.
And I think units or shells like the Revelation could be on the chopping block. Nothing's for sure yet, but I've been hearing some, a lot of rumbling that one, a lot of players think this is super overpowered, and 2, that the devs have been looking into it. So we will see what happens with that. But just as a cautionary tale, maybe don't go ahead after this video, build up like 5 revelations, just in case you want to sit tight. And I think for even units, lattice, and shells, go ahead and just wait, guys, around till next week's patch to see where we should head and build some units. But this is still a very good informative guide. So thank you so much for tuning in, and let's jump straight into it. Alrighty, starting from the top, guys, we have the number 1 shell in the game, Revelation. I do think this should be the number 1 shell because it's so versatile. It's good PvE, but since this is a PvP tier list, let's just talk about its strengths. So starting off, units like Messiah, Yelly, Rosa, top tier DPS units obviously want this. It's just very good. And here's where it gets crazy. It just seems like it's usable on so many units. If your abilities have AoE, if they multi-hit, think of units like Freya, Selintz, Yang, even units like Mia sometimes can all use this shell. Casio, Obel, anyone that has multi-hitting abilities can use this shell to varying degrees of effectiveness, but the fact that it's so versatile, does so much damage right now, and can shred through even the tankiest of units, even on Bloodbath if you have multiple revelations, just makes this a top tier shell for pretty much everything in the game. Now, are there counters to it? Of course, yes, there are ways to build around it, namely things like Lighthouse, things like Amber. We're going to talk about that in just a second here. But yeah, for those reasons, guys, I think Revelation is by far the top dog and is the number 1 reason I think it is on the chopping block and will probably be, adjusted, hopefully just for PvP. I think it's fine for PvE. Next up, we have the Codex of Magic. Now, this is I put this in the number 2 spot, but honestly, I think things like Lighthouse could overtake it. It's really just, after the Revelation, everything in S tier is really strong. But Codex, same thing like Revelation here. Just like PvE, PvP, it is strong in both. It just gives you so much potential in a turn-based game. The fact that we can rip 2 abilities in a row, like the massive amount of cooldown, is incredible for tempo. It's just so strong on certain units that have powerful skills, namely control abilities. I think are the best with this, and it also has very good matrices. It has a very good matrices spread, so you don't always just bring it just for the cooldown. A lot of times you just use it because it has very nice matrices, which we're going to talk about at the end of the video. So for those reasons, I think Codex is still one of the top. And honestly, once Revelation gets knocked down a peg, if it gets knocked down a peg, this could be the number 1 shell in the game after that. Next up, guys, we have Lighthouse, and I think Lighthouse right now has a lot of potential because Revelation is so strong. If Revelation gets knocked down, Lighthouse probably takes a few hits, down the tier list. But right now, it is one of the best ways to counter things like Revelation. There's multiple ways to use this, of course, as well. One, you could just put it on your bruisers like Tiamat. She wants the healing, she wants the CR push, or the turn meter push, excuse me. You could also use it in other ways, like on your supports. Number 1 is like on a healer, like Ling Lo, Fusho. If they take a hit, they kind of cut in line, and they can either heal the team after like the first Revelation user attacks, like a Freya, and then either top off, provide immunity, whatever the unit might be, barriers if it's like Fusho. The other interesting thing, guys, is you could even use this to counter Revelation by putting it on something like a Kraken. What do you call it? The Casio, the Obels. You kind of tune them around 270, and when your opponent hits you with that first revelation, they get surprised by the lighthouse heal, the cut, and then you go ahead and jump in with whatever crowd control unit and interrupt their entire game plan. It's a very powerful strategy right now at high-end Mythic. A lot of these little minute, what do you call them, strategies will be either adjusted for, the players will adapt, or in general, when revelation gets knocked down a peg, you know, that may not be a thing. But just in case, if you're still climbing, keep an eye on that. Next up, we have Gigabyte, and the only thing holding back Gigabyte and Artisan here, if you notice, compared to like my previous tier list, they've gone down quite a bit, and that's just because of the matrices. They don't have things like the Swift Smite or the Swift Raid, Swift Smite, you know, the ones that get 15% speed, and for those reasons, they also lack certain higher end matrices that other shells like the Codex and the Lighthouse can have, namely things like Bulwark. But in general, Gigabyte in PvP, where you have 4 units and the faster your opponents go, this thing is absolutely insane. I think it is the #1 like tempo or turn meter push shell, as long as we can survive, right? Which a lot of times, unfortunately, we need to be on like a Lighthouse or an Amber just to survive things like the Revelation or Messiah Yelly. Once those get knocked down a peg, the damage gets lowered at all. I think Gigabyte is going to be one of the, you know, it is extremely strong right now, and it's going to continue to be an extremely strong shell just for the amount of turn meter push it gives you in PvP, because there's 4 opponents that we can just cycle through our shell ability. Next up, we have Artisan, and Artisan I think is still very good. It's the use cases have kind of gone down. Like this is one of the #1 PvE artifacts, just because having a huge barrier for your team is good. However, units like Holden and Rahu are the main ones that want to use this. You could throw this on like a Lily or something still. However, typically you want, like I mentioned, that Swift Rush, or sorry, the Swift Raid or the Swift Smite. You need that extra speed, and unfortunately Artisan cannot roll that. So for those reasons in PvP, I think it does get knocked down a peg. However, for the Rahu Holdens, any of those defense scalers, this is still extremely strong. It's still so powerful in PvP, especially when you know, you combine it with either healing or you keep that unit alive at 1 health. That huge barrier is game breaking, and it is still the premier defense scaling shell. So for those reasons, you know, we still keep it here in the S tier. Now, Jackal Guard is one I think is going to gain a lot of stock moving forward here. It does kind of fall behind, especially things like Gigabyte. Just because I think, you know, either a lot of teams have a turn meter or speed up Lily via Tsukiyomi via Fusho. However, I think the damage ability on the Jackal Guard is extremely strong for control teams. So stacking like a few Jackal Guards, and then you just, you know, keep controlling your opponents to death, that extra hit that it provides where you can actually target it is pretty strong. So I could see Jackal Guard with that. With the fact that it still turn meter pushes you, if you don't have speed up, that's very valuable. And then the damage, and then on top of it, it has very good matrices, better matrices I would say, than something like Gigabyte, right? It has access to the Bulwark, and it has access to things like the Swift Smite. Now, last but not least, guys, we have the count, and this thing I think is amazing. This could probably go up. I think I'll probably move this up in the tier as we progress through the Etheria game. Etheria's game time. Some of the best matrices, so unique matrices in the game compared to other DPS shells like Revelation and Whitefang. It has other, you know, you can have bruiser style, what do you call it, matrices on here like Bulwark. And then I think in general, for units like let's say Hoyan in particular, it's extremely strong, and I've seen people cook and try things like Messiah and Yelly as well. However, I think for at least me personally on Messiah and Yelly, I still prefer just Revelation, and then instead of like Bulwark, I'll build something like Bloodbath instead to make them tankier. If you watch my last PvP video, I have a Bloodbath Yelly on Revelation. But I think the Bulwark count will be good, and if Revelation takes a hit in terms of PvP performance, expect the count to kind of be the premier DPS shell if you're trying to build, you know, in a either more utility way with Bulwark or more bulk. Next up, guys, in the A tier, I was really debating putting Amber up here in S, but I think if, you know, for the moving forward, I think if Revelation gets toned down, and for the fact that this thing is just always bugged for some reason, the interactions of how it works is so wonky, I think it goes down to A tier, and especially if you're not running it on like a Tiamat, I think there's better options. Like I have it on my Sonya right now, but if I had a Lighthouse or Gigabyte or something, I think that would be just as effective, if not more so. The main thing is really just Tiamat. Tiamat has some really cool interactions with this, where she can sometimes proc her dragon form straight out of it, and it can really help you against those fast, squishier teams. However, right now, I don't know if it's working incorrectly or properly. It seems to break every patch, and it currently, if you are hit with something like a wound, an unhealable defense, debuff, Amber will actually not cleanse first, and so that big heal proc that you get, the main reason you run this, gets kind of nullified, and they can just one tap you in that frozen state. So for those reasons, I think Amber stays down here because it's kind of bugged, it's just wonky. And 2, everyone besides Tiamat, I think there's better options. And 3, if Revelation gets adjusted right, I think we go for things like Lighthouse or Gigabyte, some other utility shells instead. Next up, guys, we have Alicorn. Now, Alicorn is one that could go up to S tier as soon as Revelation gets knocked down, because control, right? Tank down and control will go up in stocks if the Revelation cleave goes down. And I think things like Alicorn right now would be played. However, we all have to build other shells. We have to run Lighthouse. We have to run Amber, because Revelation just does so much damage. You die if you if you don't have one of these two. That's where the Alicorn will come in once Revelation gets toned down. If it gets toned down, I think Alicorn will be so useful on a lot of Animus, a lot of characters, and the fact that it can cleanse 2 debuffs is very powerful, and it has good access to Matrices as well. So I think Alicorn will shoot up depending on how the patch notes go next week. So stay tuned for that. Now, White Fang is still very good. However, I do think it's more of like a budget or midline shell. It's like your early Swift raid access, since Nikonan is so easy. However, the DPS options that want this are typically, just DTing and... yeah, I don't know anyone else. I feel like Count is superior. If you're not running Revelation, Count just seems the superior shell. So it's really just those early Swift raid units. I still have it on some of my openers. Nothing wrong with that, but I do think it's not as good as the rest, and for those reasons, we keep it down here in kind of the middle. Now, Law of Silence, I think, is one that also needs more time to cook. I've seen people pull off some crazy things with this, either through the use of like buff extension or just in general to kind of protect your unit. But for the most part, I think there are easier shells to run. I think for those reasons, guys, I think there's just better options. I haven't really seen anything too impressive yet, besides kind of those niche combos where you really stack up the buff duration. But I think in the future also this could climb up. It has it has one of the most unique abilities in the game, and then it does have a good at least a good set of matrices to top it off as well. Now in the B tier, we're gonna start wrapping things up, guys. These are all shells that could be very good for PvP, or sorry, for PvE, but not really great for PvE. I mean, Halloween is okay. However, if you're running something like a Casio, or a crowd controller, things like Codex and Magic or Revelation are just straight up better. It's really just this is too slow to really be effective. PvP, especially if you're not like a turn 2 bruiser, you really want to be front loading your abilities, your damage, your crowd control. And so this is, this is a cycler. You want a longer match for this, and typically that doesn't pay off for those units that run something like this. Golden Lion, I feel like, is just the only reason people run this is it's kind of like White Fang. If you have good matrices on it, sure, why not? It's just a good passive or matrice holder, but other than that, I don't really see a reason. Same thing with the healing shells, guys. Both Supernova and Fortissimo. Maybe Fortissimo in the future could have some cool use cases, like in a bruiser matchup. However, right now, I just don't think it's good. There's a lot of access to debuffs, a lot of access to unhealable, and things like Lighthouse, Gigabyte, and Amber are just way more, active. Like they're just way more proactive in dealing with the current meta than any of these healing shells. And last but not least, Darkmoon. Let's not even talk about this guy. He's just terrible. With that being said, guys, let's go ahead and let's go jump in game, and I'll talk about some of the matrices and passives to look out for. All right, guys, let's go ahead and talk about the shells, and I'll try to get through most of at least the S tier shells and talk about the matrices as well as the recommended passives. But let's just start with the my bruiser Bloodbath Yelly. For the shell Revelation, I still think this is the best instead of going something like Count, because Revelation is just so strong right now. You could get either Fury Edge or Swift Raid, depending if you need more damage, crit chance, or if you want more speed. I like Fury Edge, but honestly, I feel like there's sometimes my speed tuning could be better, even as a turn 2 player. So honestly, your mileage may differ. Just depends what you want out of that. Momentum is always really good on these Revelations, though. Whenever you are going to break up the set, guys, meaning you're not going for the set bonuses, as you can see here, we're just completely dodging the onslaught. It's a non-factor, and instead we're forcing 12 Bloodbath. We're going to get the free crit chance, and then we get the 6-piece Fury Edge or Swift Raid. That would be my recommendation for just tanky units that want Bloodbath on Revelation. If you're just running a damaging Revelation on like a Freya, on like a Yang, on a Selintz, a Heinrich, something like that, then you build something more like this, right? Swift Raid for the speed. You would force the Swift Rush like we forced the Bloodbath, and then you get the free 6-piece momentum for the crit chance once again. In terms of passives for this one, you just get attack, crit chance, or shadow step, whatever the the speed passive right here. And then for the third one, you can either get damage or you get insight if it's more crowd control unit. I'll talk about insight in a second when I show a shell that has it. Next up, y'all, I got a Codex of Magic here for y'all. I just have an example Casio build. Here are the stats for it. And I like the fact that we can get Swift Rush, Bulwark, and a Swift Ray. This is one of the reasons I like Codex of Magic, not just for its ability itself. I kind of mentioned that it has strong matrices like the Bulwark. So if we look at the shell itself, we can go a lot of different ways. This is just the way I like Codex of Magic. Just keep an eye out. This has so many different matrices options, but it's kind of the same thing here. Once again, unfortunately, guys, I will show you. You know what? We'll take a look at Insight now. But first off, you know, Shadow Dash is always nice. For the most part, this first one, just get anything really that gives us some type of bulk. I wouldn't spend too much training data for it, but really it's just this mid one for speed, always for, you know, these kind of units. And then for the third part, I would actually try to grab Insight, which we can hopefully, where do we see it here? Passive effect. Let's go to passive slot 3, and I will show you Insight. Now this, I have been hearing reports, guys, that Insight is weighted to roll really low. Like, it just feels very hard to get. And the fact that there's no, like, you know, purple version might be indicative of that. And I will show you, I do have one of these on my other shells, but we have up to 48 to 60% effect resistance and effect accuracy. So not only can we use this for units like Casio, crowd controllers, but we will also use this on units like Ling Lo, for example, on cleansers, on support units. Now it does get reduced by 20% at the end of each turn, which I'm assuming, like, you know, after 3 turns it loses complete value. However, a lot of times, right, on units like Casio, I was talking about this, you just want, you know, tempo. You want to front load your abilities because you take a huge advantage. You don't want the match to go long. You want to end that match pretty early, or at least get such an overwhelming advantage in the first few turns that, you know, your opponent cannot recover. And that's why things like Codex of Magic, for its double, you know, its cooldown abilities, as well as stacking things like Insight, can be extremely powerful on this shell. Next up is Lighthouse. Now this thing is very, very strong. Unfortunately, I don't have one ready for like that kind of Kraken, what do you call it, Obol kind of cut in that I mentioned, but it's a similar mentality as this. You want to be like around 270 speed, I would say 270, 280 to cut in on a Lighthouse against some of these opening revelations. So for example, my Ling here has a decent shot at cutting in between some units and getting an S3 off, but in general, Lighthouse is just super powerful. You want to make sure your unit is fast to get that cut ability. As you can see here, 25% increased turn meter. And so things like Shadow Dash on the second passive, I think, is optimal. Now, if you are playing something like Ling Lo, obviously you could go for the cleanse, or sorry, the effect resist passive here on number 2. And here's the Insight that I was talking about. Once again, not just good for effect accuracy units like Casio and Kraken or Obol, it's also good for cleansers like Ling Lo if you want to stack that F-res, which is definitely a viable option. So for Matrices, Swift Rush, Bloodbath is what I'm opting for here. However, you could also try something like Bulwark instead if you want to drop the effect resist. Moving right along, guys, we have Gigabyte. Now this could be on a lot of different units. You can put this on your healers, you can put this on your Viper. I think this is just a very strong shell. Remember, I outlined at the start because of how much turn meter it can give you, especially in PvP where we're fighting 4 opponents. The faster they are, the more value we get. So once again, it's kind of your usual suspects in terms of passives. Shadow Dash is always a nice one, and honestly on this Viper, I kind of saved my my, what do you call them, training data and the reconfig chips just because I've been running low. However, once again, things like Insight for Viper could be nice. More damage reduction here, and then any type of defense or HP, I would say, for both healers as well as units like Viper. As long as you're not an HP scaler or defense scaler, in which case you need to choose a specific one. In general, effective HP is always nice, so, you know, pick whichever highest roll you get. In terms of Matrices, the Evil Guard or Swift Smite for the most part, or sorry, it's not Swift Smite, it's Evil Guard or the, I think, Ether Plague. For the most part, you can probably skip that. It's no difference if you want to go 12, 8, 6, or excuse me, 12 Bloodbath, 8 Swift Rush, and then 6 here. You would drop some speed. So in my recommendations, since neither of these have speed, I would just go 12, 12. Swift Rush, Bloodbath, I think is the most optimal for the current meta. Now remember, once Revelation gets nerfed, if it does, things like Bloodbath will lose value, and then we can start running some different options here on the Gigabyte. But for now, I think Bloodbath is just very, very powerful to have if you are playing, you know, if you're not being the aggressor, if you're playing more of the standard or turn 2 tank down player. Next up, we got the Rahu. Who better to show off the Artisan for than Mr. Rahu? Now, one quick notice, guys, if you are playing Holden, I actually recommend not getting Bramble and instead go for something like Swift Rush or Strive. Holden doesn't need the Bramble, and I don't think it's worth it. Instead, you could get more utility, more speed, going for a different setup. However, for Rahu, we really like Bramble, we really like Bloodbath, and we really like Colossus Guard. So I would recommend a 12 Bloodbath, 8 Bramble, 6 Colossus Guard for Rahu. And by the way, Rahu is the real deal, guys, for high-end real-time arena or fearless arena. If you are a turn 2 player, make sure you get this unit, make sure you invest into him. It's very, very worthwhile. Check my PvP video if you want to see how I built him exactly. In terms of the passives though, guys, of course, right, on defense scalers, you want that defense. I like the crit rate because I like to go defense crit and try to stay around, you know, 85 to 90. It's really hard to get that perfect 100 if you only have one crit rate, what do you call it, module. However, I think 85 is good enough, especially when you're attacking opposite element units. A lot of times I'll bring my Rahu against opposing Tiamats, for example, right, which is nice. And then last but not least, I have some damage here, but you could kind of go whatever. You go damage reduction. But for me, since I play a lot of times solo Rahu, I want as much damage as possible. So, you know, we'll eventually look out for 12% green damage here when we can. But for now, this is very good. Now, this next one is my budget Jackal Guard. So for those of you that have been saying like, dang, this guy has really nice shells and really nice passives. Well, here you go, guys. Even me, I haven't found a good Jackal Guard. Those of you watching, comment below what shell eludes you, what Inferno setup. I farmed so much. I think Jackal Guard, it's been a while, but I believe it's Shadowflame Hoyan. I farmed that forever to try to get a good Jackal Guard. I was looking for something like Swift Rush, Bulwark, plus a Swift Smite. That would be my dream. That would be one of the premier shells I could run that has the Bulwark and the speed, right, to really utilize this Jackal Guard. I just could never get one. So I never really optimized the passives, and this is just a very like second, third string backup shell. I don't even use it really for PvP until I get that really nice Inferno shell. However, just in general, we follow the rules of the rest of the shells I showed y'all. Go for like a, 12, 8, 12 Swift Rush, 8 Bulwark into a 6 Swift Smite. That's going to give you optimal speed, give you that immunity, and that's going to make you so versatile. We could run this on crowd control units like Kazuo Obol. We could run this on healers. You could even maybe run it on something like a Viper, depending on how you're going to use him. So in general, I think this is very strong. I just can't seem to get an Infernal Jackal Guard though. 2 more quick shells to talk about. Let's go ahead and talk about the Count, which I'm mainly using right now on my Hoyan. The Count, it's kind of like the Revelation I showed y'all. We're going to try to break up the set here. This time though, we actually get the both Bulwark and the Harvest and the Fury Edge. So, you know, not breaking it up completely, but you could optimize a 12 like a Keen Eye or something. However, I think for Hoyan, this is just napkin math, but I do believe since you can't fully optimize things on like the Keen Eye set, even though we do get extra like, you know, crit damage, I think Harvest is in general for bursting, right? Since she really wants to burst the unit down, I think Harvest is optimal. I could be slightly wrong on that. I don't know the percentage differences. However, if you just want to, you know, if you don't have that perfect Onslaught or Keen Eye shell with Bulwark on your counts, then just grab something like this, right? Where you just force the set that you want, like Harvest, you have that Bulwark, and then you finish it off with the Fury Edge. Now, in terms of the passives, you know, it's typical DPS passives, and if you guys want to see something interesting here, I actually, this could be just a side tip for y'all. You can hold a passive as long as you want in this section. Just be careful not to ever, you know, abandon or overwrite. However, I'm going to keep this here for as long as possible because I don't want to get rid of a perfect Shadow Dash. These are pretty rare. So in the future, I might want a count that is more speed oriented. Maybe I want to swap to like a Swift Raid count or something. I believe you can have Swift Raid. Yeah, I can have Swift Raid. And then, you know, Shadow Dash on top of that. But for now, I'm going to keep this. It unfortunately locks me into having 18 crit damage on this. I can never get a red one until I swap this out. But for future reference, you know, I might build a different count and swap this over and then just rebuild a count for Hoyan because I think a Shadow Dash of 20 speed might be worth doing all of that effort. And finally on this list, guys, let's talk about Amber. I'll show you 2 different Ambers because I think this one in particular is one that is very unique to how I play it. And I don't think a lot of y'all should copy this. However, my Tiamat is actually on Swift Rush Bramble and not on Bloodbath. And that's because I use the Amber effect as sort of our Bloodbath ability. This is going to let me proc into her a lot sooner to get that initial dragon form for that AoE burst. We will have to build it again because it does end immediately. However, I think for those reasons, I really like this for Arena and Fearless Arena. It is a kind of greedy strategy though, and could really get punished in a longer matchup because you don't have that Bloodbath. However, I think the fast, you know, the fact that we can build our Tiamat pretty quick and we proc Amber to get into that dragon form is really, really nice with the Tiamat. Just remember what I said at the start of the video, where there's certain things like the anti-heal the wound really works in a wonky way where Amber does not get that 60% health because it's not removing the debuffs until after the heal, which I think is backwards. I don't think that's how it should work. But in terms of passes for Tiamat, HP, of course, crit rate, because we're running HP crit, and then some damage as well for her. Now, I want to show you this other one real quick, the Sonya. This is more of a typical Amber. I think you want to get the Bloodbath, Swift Rush, and the Swift Smite. You can go 12, 8, 6, just in general to get more effect accuracy on the Swift Smite. But really just use, you can go 12 Swift Rush, 12 Bloodbath, whatever gives you the overall better substats. But this one is a little more in line with how you might want to run an Amber. For like Tiamat, for example, maybe do like Bloodbath, Bramble. I believe it can, yeah, Bloodbath, Bramble. Or go on, you know, Lighthouse on your Tiamat instead. But this is just an Amber for my Sonya. This is probably not going to stay. We might swap over to Lighthouse or Gigabyte. But in general, FRES, because I am trying an FRES build on her, and combined with Insight, that's going to give us a lot of FRES turn 1, which might help, you know, keep her awake to either heal or cleanse, you know, S3 or cleanse something. So I think that wraps things up, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully your shell farming goes well. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.